Hey YouTube fam, it's me Jernigan, Sexual Middle-Aged Natural Beauty. I want to come to you guys tonight with a video about a very, very recent experience I had with the judicial system. I was summoned to jury duty. I had postponed it as long as I could, and a couple of weeks ago I didn't have the option to call. I had to report. So I went in and ultimately I was picked to be a juror in a murder case. Okay. The admonition that the judge had placed on the jurors has been lifted, so I am free to talk about this case with anyone I please. So anyway, to make this video, I don't want to make it a long video, but I just was really enlightened on the way our system works, and at the same time a little disheartened and saddened, because without giving any names, any dates, any locations, I do want to just kind of briefly overview the case with you and give you my perception, and I'll tell you what the verdict was that we all reached. The jury was made up of, it was pretty diverse. There were no African American men, but there was me and another African American woman, couple of Asian women, and I think, okay, a couple of Hispanics, and all the rest were Caucasian men of various ages. So we all made up the 12 jurors. Okay, the case was actually a retrial of a previous murder. Now, this is just my perception of the events. A man was murdered and another man was shot. And he was actually, there was an attempt to murder this man. Well, the person that had been accused of this murder had been in jail for 11 years. He apparently had been convicted one time of the crime. They brought in the witness who supposedly ID'd this guy, and he is no longer a resident of the state which this crime took place, apparently here in California. So he moved to another state because he says he just was tired of this whole situation, which this was gang violence. Okay, anyway, as I stated, the defendant had already been convicted of the crime. A public defender felt the case should be reopened because of negligence in the case of the prior defense attorney, and some I'm just going to say scandalous stuff that happened with the prosecution. Anyway, to make a long story short, evidence that could have freed this man 10 years ago was not presented in the case, and it wasn't presented this time either. We just found this out after the case, after the verdict was read. Okay. I'm going to highlight some things about that case. The defendant was, at this time, in his 30s. He was actually 20 years old when the crime was committed. He was ID'd. Well, the eyewitness supposedly said that the murderer was 5 feet 6 inches tall. The defendant was 6 feet 1. They said he was black. Of course, the defendant was black. The crime happened in front of a liquor store. Well, across the street from a liquor store that was gated. And in the initial trial, this eyewitness, quote unquote eyewitness, said there was no obstruction between him and the crime scene, and he saw the shooter up close and personal, maybe 10 to 20 feet away. And there was no obstruction between him and the shooter, which was a lie. And that lie convicted this young man 11 years ago. When the defense attorneys reopened this case, the investigation showed, as well as all of the crime scene photos, that there was no way in the world this guy could have seen what he said he had seen, because there was a gate around that liquor store, and the crime happened at least like 90 feet away. We got a chance to look at the photos and assess if there was actual visibility at that vantage point, which there was absolutely none. The most ironic and crazy thing about it was that okay, like I stated, one person was murdered, there was an attempt on his life. The one who survived was actually in court as a witness for the defense. The prosecuting attorney, the DA, had on several occasions kept asking this man, first of all, let me back up. She didn't even try to contact him when she did her investigation. She never talked to the man. Never talked to the man. And apparently the guy in custody supposedly had shot him. So that just didn't seem right. Anyway, when the defense attorney talked to this guy, he asked him, to describe the shooter. And he gave a description, which the only thing that matched was that the guy was African American. Okay, he asked if the person that shot him was in the courtroom, and the guy said no. And he asked, he said, well, the defendant is the defendant the person that shot you? He said, no. That man is an associate of mine. He did not shoot me. He's very kind to my mother. And I'm like, what? So, to me, the case ended right there. But the DA just figured she'd just carry it on and carry it on. There was no gun recovered. There was nothing that physically linked that young man to that crime scene, except this so-called eyewitness who had apparently lied in the first trial. Well, we were on this case for 8 days, and I'm just leaving out a lot of the other testimony and a lot of the other. They had expert witnesses. They had the coroner there to give his take on things. They had the officer who did the investigation. Of course, they had the DA. And so like I said, the case lasted 8 days. And when the case was given to us, the jurors, it took us 1 hour to reach a verdict. We reached our verdict yesterday at about 3:30. So we had to go back to court this morning so that it could be read. It was a very, very emotional time. So when we went back to court today, we gave the envelope to the judge. The judge opened it, he read it, he gave it to the clerk, and the clerk read the verdict. In the first count, which was the count of murder, first-degree murder, we found the defendant not guilty. In the second count of attempted murder, we found the defendant not guilty. For us as jurors to see this man's reaction, we knew we did the right thing. Unfortunately, this young man had spent 11 years of his life incarcerated, and it was unnecessary. He cried. He put his head down on this table where he sat, and he cried. And some of the jurors cried, and the defense attorney had tears welling up in his eyes, and I guess you can tell it was kind of emotional for me too. So after it was over and the judge lifted the admonition and said we could talk to anyone we wanted to talk to, we went and talked to the defense attorney. And the defense attorney told us about all the things that weren't admitted into the trial, that we didn't have access to, that would have positively acquitted this man in the first trial. And that's what made him take the case, because he knew it was totally unfair. Anyway, to make a long story short, today, along with the help of 11 other citizens of this state of California, I participated in giving a family a really wonderful Christmas gift, and I feel like I helped a young man get his life back, because today I set a man free. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to ask, comment, share this video if you like. Don't like it if you don't want to. But the whole situation really it opened my eyes about our judicial system. Yeah. You guys have a wonderful evening. This is Jernigan 6, your middle-aged natural beauty, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.